the hottest shoes right now is just like Travis Scott Jordan 1, and they just like put those two together, and it's just like that's all you need. It's just this guy and this shoe, and now
Yeah.
it's like significant. like um but it's like, yeah, the idea of being like conceptually easy to take in um is strikes a chord for sure. Like um a lot of times, like I'll just get asked like, well, what's the story, like
Sure.
you want to look at a shoe, like look at it for 3 seconds and then turn your head, like what do you remember? It's like same kind of thing. Like I feel like what do you remember? Well, I remember poop on a card. like all right, welcome episode 7. It's funny that I even know the numbers of the episodes. That's how
Lucky
far in we
seven.
are. Yeah,
Yeah.
episode 7. Tech packs are due. Welcome everybody, all you 14 subscribers. Uh, but maybe there'll be a 15 tomorrow, so we'll just keep going. Yeah, Forward Design Podcast. But today's going to be a little different. I am Jake. I've 7 episodes in. Hopefully you know who I am by now. Forward designer. And today we are going to be venturing. I think I'm starting a side thing called Outside the Shoebox. Maybe that probably, I don't know if that'll stick, but it's
Sure.
outside the shoebox. But basically, I want to talk to people outside of the footwear industry because we get, I think, in our little silo, from time to time, even at Brooks, Rad, wherever you're working, it's good to just get out of your own kind of bubble and hear what other people are doing, see what other people do, talk to them, what inspires them. Oftentimes we'll go like on offsites and stuff like that, but I think also just getting into different things. Like I talked before about listening to like real estate podcasts and um you know politics. I feel like everyone does that. It's not that exciting, but anyway. So today we have Brian Knudson on, and
Hello.
yeah, Brian and I have a fun background, but I don't know, he I don't know if he wonders why I have a fascination with him, but I think Brian is one of the most creative people I've met. And it's kind of low key. Like he keeps it, pretty low key, but he's good at being creative, having an idea, and then following through with the idea. He doesn't just have something. He creates the whole vision, creates the whole world, goes from A to B and to C and to D and to whatever the finished letter is, and then is done and makes a thing. And usually it's pretty high quality, I'd say, and I am always jealous of it. It's part of what's inspired this podcast as well. Is like I'm like, man, if like I don't want to just say I'm going to do it, because that's what I do a lot. I'll tell my friends and like, hey, I'm going to do this thing, and then I never do it, or a half do it, or a third do it. But darn it, this podcast is going to be the thing where I see it through. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're not
So
alone. I
just,
mean, most people are like that, right?
yeah. Are they?
Most people have lots of big ideas and don't actually do them.
Right. And so I think I am here to just, this is the outlet for me to achieve my goals or whatever.
Do
Anyway,
something.
but yeah, Brian is awesome. I think I know about maybe like 1/10 of all the things Brian has done. Sometimes I feel like he's in UI UX, but I don't know. like,
Yeah. I mean,
sometimes,
that's
and then sometimes you're making music, and sometimes you're writing, and sometimes you're doing this. But yeah, why don't you clear the air on that and help
yeah,
me? Yeah,
sure. I mean, professionally, where the most of my income comes in, I'm a user experience consultant for a consulting company, and I'm currently working at Alaska Airlines as a product designer for the like the Hawaii merger for
Oh,
the cargo
nice.
team. So like Hawaiian and Alaska are merging, and I'm on the team that's making the stuff for what the new website's going to look like when it's when the cargo. I'm like, because when you
Nice.
ship produce or dangerous goods or fireworks or whatever, and you can't send it on a commercial flight. So
Yeah, that's right.
it's a whole different world, and so that's what I'm currently working on professionally.
Yeah.
So then in addition to that, I've really have a music bug at the moment. So I've been performing out. I got a couple of shows at some wineries and some things coming up.
Nice. Nice.
I got a Christmas album that I've been working on that I'm hoping to drop here on Spotify December 1st. That's my goal. So I'm kind of fine tuning. I'm just self publishing it, so I'm not really going through any studio or
Right.
I just want it to be done and
Nice.
available on all your streaming platforms. Um and yeah, that's what I've been doing professionally for maybe 15, oh no, probably closer to 17 years or so.
Wow.
I got my start. I was I went to my undergrad in I got a degree in philosophy, and I thought that I was going to be a doctor,
That's
and
right.
then I didn't get in anywhere, and I was like, okay, maybe I could. Yeah. Anyway, I ended up in sales, and I got a philosophy degree, and it took me about 5 years to realize that I hate sales, and because I'm not money motivated,
Sure, sure.
um, I'm project motivated really, and so I think that I've realized lately is that I'm sort of driven by wanting to help people, wanting to make things, and want to figure things out. Like those, it's kind of like feeling so, and that's where user experience design is kind of like for me. It's a good spot because I feel like I'm always kind of testing stuff, and I'm kind of figuring out. I'm always making a thing, and it feels like I'm helping. Um,
Nice.
but so
How'd you find
I
your
went.
way from philosophy to
Well, I mean, philosophy. Essentially, I took philosophy because somebody had told me that if you're a doctor, you can study anything you want, and then so
yeah.
long as you take science classes, right? So I was at BYU. It was funny. I remember thinking at one point, I was taking, after I finished all my generals, I was just taking philosophy classes, science classes, and religion classes, and it's just kind of funny how they're all sort of like aiming at the same idea of ultimate truth or whatever in this weird way, right?
Right.
Um,
Sweet. Sweet.
but so yeah, so I was in sales. So I'm essentially I was like, oh, okay, I can either retake the MCAT, retake organic chemistry, is like, or I have enough
Oh,
credits to a philosophy degree right now. I'll just do that. And then I got a sales job selling scientific equipment. And then so I was doing that for a couple years, and then I was like, I hate this. And I had a friend who was doing an evening master's program at UW, and he was taking a tour of the T-Mobile usability labs. And he said, "Hey, come with
mm,
me to this." And so I went to it. And I was like, "Oh, this is so cool!" Because at the time, my brother and we had started a little board game company, and so we were designing board games,
right.
and we had just licensed one, and so we were all like, okay, these guys are publishing our game, like, and my brother and he was more actually the visual designer, and I kind of like worked on the rules, and I would
Right.
like take like he would come to me like, hey, so I listened to this podcast, or I listened to this lecture about World War I, and I made this map, and I don't know what to do with it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I'd be like, okay, what if we did it like a Risk but without dice, and we did it kind of a rock paper scissors thing, and then and
Right.
I'd like sketch out this thing, and then we'd like play test it, and then I'd take it to a board game store, and I'd find people say, hey, you guys want to try this game that I'm working on? And so I did that for a while, And so I was really excited about the usability thing because I really enjoyed that aspect of like testing and like
Yeah.
iterating and like making a thing and then like just watching people see how they do it and be like, oh, okay, I need to. Okay, they don't understand it. If it's called that, they get it confused with this other thing. So I need to change what it's take notes and stuff. And so that iteration was real fun. And then to learn that there was a whole industry of usability and user experience design, it like kind of blew my mind. I was like, whoa, that is exactly the thing that I want to
Yeah.
be doing. I love doing that part. And the market, and I feel like I got in at a good time, in
Yeah.
terms of like it was kind of before anybody else was doing it.
Hmm.
And so and I mean now it's really common and there's a lot of junior folks, and so but
Right.
it's good.
Yeah, to be doing it
um
like 15, 17 years, that's like the
yeah,
that's like the beginning time of UX, UI. Like,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, at
um,
that time there was only like 4 or 5 books that
right.
everybody's like, yeah, you read Inmates Running the Asylum, you've read Design of Everyday Things, you've read Don't Make Me
Yeah.
Think, and there weren't that many. Now there's a lot more.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I got that. So I went back to school and I got a master's in human centered design and engineering, and so
Where's that at? Who is that
University of
program?
Washington, Mr. Washington,
Oh,
UW.
yeah. Okay.
So
UW.
so I did that in the evening for a
Nice.
couple of years. Actually, my second daughter, was born the that same week as school started, and I started a new job. All that same like that week was that like month was it's a blur to me
Yeah.
because
No kidding.
second child. Anyway, um,
There's no
so
there's no paid leave for university students. There's no
yeah,
like
well, and that, I mean, actually, there's a little part of me that's a little bitter about paid leave in general because I feel like all this legislation passed after I was done having kids, and it's like, oh, that would be really nice to be able to take time off. I unfortunately was not able to take any of that, so
Yeah.
have fun,
Yeah,
young dad.
I'd say it's pretty cool. I'd say
Yeah.
like
Um.
yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, and then I did a externship thing in at IBM for a bit, but then our board game, the guys who had licensed our board game, there was like an internal schism, and this one group left and started this new company, and they approached me and was like, "Hey, we know that you have other games you're working on. Do you want to come and be our internal studio?" And
Mm,
as I look at my brother come too, they're like, yeah. And so my brother and I, we started in this thing. We did it for a year. Essentially, I was just designing board games full time, and it was really great.
nice.
Um, and if you've ever played the most likely game of mine that I've designed that you've most likely played is a card game called Kittens in a Blender. If you know, so that's the only one that I felt
Yeah.
like was actually fairly successful.
Yeah.
Um,
How many board games have you been a part of?
Published maybe 10.
Jeez.
So
What?
so because I think
Yeah.
we did like maybe 7 that for that year, and then the owners and the management got in this big fight, and the company kind of
Right.
spiraled and fell apart.
Yeah.
But I had maintained all these industry contacts, and so
Hmm.
after the fact, there was a handful of people that would be like, "Hey, I still have this game that's almost done. Anybody want to make this?" And Kickstarter hadn't really existed yet, and that's actually there's a part of me that just feels like, oh, it's so crazy, like how much the board game industry has changed even since I was doing it.
Yeah.
And it was crazy too. When we were there, we had the Marvel license,
Okay.
and so we could make games based on Marvel properties. But at the time, the only Marvel movies that had been made were Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man. If you can remember
Was
that
that when
time.
was that when they were like still pretty dry? Like Iron Man
Yeah, I
1 was
mean,
like okay.
yeah, they're okay. So like we had a sales lady on in our company, and when she got the phone call that the company was dissolving, she was on the set of she was on the helicarrier
Wow.
they were filming, Avengers 1, and it was like we're just on the cusp, like we were like so close to like making a no, we had like I had a
Wow.
couple games. I went to Marvel Studio like in New York. I pitched a couple of games. It's like, okay, this is what I'm imagining. Like and it was a real neat, experience. But, didn't happen.
Man, that's a
Yeah.
crazy story.
What could have been? What could have been?
Yeah. Wow. That's like what do they call it? Like first, oh my gosh. It's when you like buy a stock and like you're a first mover. You're like a first
Oh,
mover.
sure. Yeah.
You're like a first mover in the Marvel board games.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Coulda, shoulda.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then that kind of fell apart, and then I just got a UX job, information. I was working at
Yeah.
AT&T.
Um do you have any like talk about like the board games, man? Like that sounds like
Sure,
super
I can talk about
interesting.
board
Like
games. Yeah.
yeah, like how are you so like is like you said someone was doing the artwork
Yeah,
and were
my brother generally did most of the artwork at the beginning, especially. But then they hired on another guy to be the kind of the art director,
right.
and then so he would kind of source out different art elements.
Right, right.
So I typically would just sketch stuff out, lots of boxes and arrows, lots of like this and then this and then
Yeah.
and I still have somewhere a box full of like decks of cards that I just with a Sharpie wrote things on, right? So it's like this is
Right.
this, right? And so
That's like the ultimate
actually,
like UI. Like you're just
yeah,
marker cards.
yep,
How does this what do you do with this? Like
yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, well, that's how we did. So Kittens in a Blender. Actually, here's a good story. You want to hear a good story? This is what this is
I
about, right? You want to hear
I
some good
hope
stories?
so.
You might maybe I've told you a story. So I told you my most successful game was Kittens in a Blender,
Right.
right? Not to be confused with Exploding
Loading
Kittens.
kittens. Yeah.
Different game. And in fact, about a year before Exploding Kittens came out, I was looking for a different job from the AT&T, which I just said that I
Yeah.
was working at. I was looking for a different
Got
job,
you.
and I had a buddy who was working for like Microsoft, something. They were doing something with Xbox and films and something. And he said, "Hey, come interview with my boss." So I interviewed with his boss, this guy named Elon Lee. And I kind of told him, what I do, and but nothing came of it.
Right.
And then about a month later, we were going down to L.A. for a wedding, and this friend of mine lived in L.A. and I said, "Hey, we're coming," and he said, "Hey, come have dinner with us." So we went to the wedding, and then after we went to dinner at this guy's house. And after dinner, he said, "Hey, by the way, my boss is working on this card game. Love to get your thoughts on it." Pulls out this deck of cards, and similarly, and it had things written on the different cards.
Right.
And he says, and we play this game, and the game's fine, and it's called Bomb Squad. And I say, okay, and so I say, so what do you think? And I say, well, let me tell you this. The only problem, the game's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not an amazing game, but it's fine. What it's missing is like a hook or a theme to make it cool. And let me tell you, my most successful game is this game called Kittens in a Blender. And the way we made that game was because my brother and I were sitting at Gen Con, which is a big board game convention. And we were sitting there, we were selling this war game, like this Risk sort of game called Balance of Power. It's like a
Hmm.
$50 game. It had all these pieces. It's complicated. It would take 10 minutes to explain the rules. Somebody would walk up, and you'd say, okay,
Yeah.
well, this is how it works, and let me show you a demo thing, and this is and they go, okay, and they consider, and then they walk across, and we were across the convention, just like the little hallway from these guys selling a card game called Pooh, and it was a game about monkeys in a zoo throwing poo at each other. That was the game, and we would watch people come talk to us, cross the aisle, pick up this game, laugh at it, and it was a $10 game. And they're like, dude, I'm buying this. And they just would buy it without
Yep.
anybody explaining anything other than like, this is poo. And the artwork is cute. And like, this is so funny. And it made us so mad. They're like, dude, if that's all you need, we just needed like, okay, what's a game? And we just pitched ideas like names. And at some
Yeah.
point, my brother's like, how about kittens in a blender? And we laughed and laughed. It's like, oh, that'd be great. We went back to our hotel room and pulled out a deck of cards and a marker. It's like, okay, here are my kittens, here are your kittens. This is the blender. Okay, here's a card called Dogs in the Kitchen, and that's good. We just like say, and here's one. Okay, and this is how it could kind of work, and like we just it riffed, and
Mm,
probably 95% of the way the game is, we developed like in an hour that night,
man.
and then the next week we pitched it to the bosses, and they're like, oh, that's so great.
Right.
And then we got artists, and it fast tracked past all the other stuff that we were working on because everybody loved it.
Yeah.
And so I tell this to my friends, like, and it's not the gameplay. The gameplay's fine, but it's the concept, and that's what you need is a
Yeah.
is a is a sexy concept. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, that's cool. So a year later, uh, I happen to be, I'm the admin for the Facebook page of Kittens in a Blender, which I don't know if I'm even using it anymore, but at the time, all of a sudden I get all these notifications, like, what is going on? My phone's blowing up. All these
Yeah.
people mentioning that Exploding Kittens is,
Oh
going
man.
crazy on Kickstarter, makes $10 million or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
I look and I'm like, wait a minute, that's the guy that's the guy that I interviewed with. That was his boss. And then I'm watching. That's Bomb Squad. That's the game that I played.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wait, did I somehow like? What did I did? Am I owed some sort of compensation for this? Did
Yeah.
I give
Yeah.
these guys this idea? What is going on? Right?
Oh man.
And it perplexed me, or like bugged me for a bit. But it just so happened that my brother-in-law is he's a race director. He manages half marathons and stuff.
Yeah.
Orca running. Maybe some of your listeners
Sure.
shoot people, maybe runner people.
Did it make it down to PDX?
Anyway, he was managing the oatmeal. The guy who does the oatmeal. What's his name?
Yeah.
I know his name. What is his name?
Oatmeal guy?
Yeah. Anyway, he has a race called Beat the Blurch,
Okay.
and my brother-in-law was managing it, and he said, "Hey, what is that guy's name? I feel like I need his name.
I'm like Kroger,
No.
Quaker Oats. Like,
Web comic. Matt Inman is his name.
okay.
He's like, oh, hey, Matt Inman is associated with the Kittens in a Blend, or the Exploding Kittens game, because he did the artwork for it, and he's also doing this race. So my brother-in-law was invited to the launch party of Exploding Kittens.
Okay.
And he said, you want to go to Matt Inman's party with me? And I was like, yes, of course I do. And so I go with him, and I'm kind of like, okay, what am I gonna do? What is my goal here? And so I get there, and it's fascinating. Matt Inman's a fascinating guy.
Yeah.
I mean, that party aside, had lots of weird things about it. Had a mobile petting zoo there, and he had this like Tesla coil gun that he was showing people. Anyway, but I run into Elon Lee, right? The guy, the maker. He's there, and I'm like, hey, do you remember me? Right? And he's like, oh yeah, hey, yeah. And we kind of like, is okay. And I said, well, let me tell you my experience. And I essentially relate the same thing to you. And he's
Yeah.
like, oh, whoa, that is so crazy. And he says that the kitten's idea was Matt Inman's idea. And that's
Huh.
what, and so like, I mean, whether he's lying or not, like I felt like whatever, but like, it quelled some of my like fears, I guess. But like, it was just sort of a weird,
Yeah, that's
like,
something.
well, and then also one of the other ideas that my brother and I had was bears versus babies, which was like their next game. It's like I have a conversation thread with my brother, and we were like what about, and bears anyway.
Wow.
So it's one of these kind of shared brain syndrome.
Yeah.
No ideas are real unique.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna make it eventually.
Yeah. Um, something I think you said something that I think is pretty interesting though, like needing a hook, needing something
Mm-hmm.
simple, watching those people just I feel like you spend all this time on a game and you're developing it for however long it takes to develop like a big game with complex strategy, only to see it just get like out consumed by
Yep.
poop.
Something stupid.
Like,
Yep.
um, but I think what you're saying is interesting because it's like I think there's no difference. I'd say between like um, I mean, there's a little difference between people who buy shoes and people who buy board games and sneakerheads and stuff. But essentially,
Sure.
like,
It's a
but
similar
like,
thing though.
yeah, but it's like, yeah, it's similar. Where like, people will just go and buy Skechers because it's just a shoe and they get it. One of the hottest shoes right now is just like Travis Scott Jordan 1, and they just like put those two together, and it's just like that's all you need. It's just this guy and this shoe, and now
Yeah.
it's like significant. Like, um, but it's like, yeah, the idea of being like conceptually easy to take in, um, is strikes a chord for sure. Like, um, a lot of times, like I'll just get asked, like, well, what's the story? Like
Sure.
you want to look at a shoe, like look at it for 3 seconds, and then turn your head. Like, what do you remember? It's like same kind of thing. Like, I feel like, what do you remember? Well, I remember poop on a card. Like, that's that's
Yeah.
pretty that's pretty easy to
Yeah.
remember. Like, got it. Like, finding that hook, I think that's pretty interesting. Definitely applicable to creatives wherever you are in
Sure. Well, yeah,
your
and that's also I feel like that's also something in that simplification, like um not to, I not that long after I wrote a couple of books, a couple of fantasy books,
yeah.
and spent a lot of time working on those, and but now I felt like there was a lot of work for the payoff. Like, one is to get, like, to convince somebody to read a 500-page book, take a month to read this thing that I wrote,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Compared to now, I mean, my chief creative output at right now is
Right.
songwriting, right? Like, and
Right.
I'll go to a open mic probably once a week. I just finished a song just last week, and I was like, okay, I gotta go play it now, right? And
Right.
like, the difference between, hey, take 3 minutes to listen to this thing, and I get immediate applause, immediate reaction.
Yep.
Compare that to, this took me 3 years to write, and now I'm begging anybody to read it,
Right.
and they
Right.
might, and then if they did, like, I'm lucky if they liked it or wrote a review or paid any money on it, right? And so
Right.
like, and and so, I mean, not to discourage anybody
Yeah.
from writing books, but like, part of the question ends up being, and I think this comes back to maybe what you wanted to talk about it at all to begin with, is like, why do you finish some things and not others, and
Right.
like,
Right.
how do you do that? And I think part of the thing for me anyway, I think is it's like almost making a promise with myself and wanting to be true to it. Like I want to do this thing, setting a goal, sometimes realizing that like, oh, getting an actual book deal is kind of really hard.
Right.
But getting a physical book through Amazon Kindle, that's actually not that hard at all. Like the barrier to entry. And so like, does that count? And then to reevaluate, is that good enough? And I was like, yeah, that's good enough.
Hmm.
I don't care. Like, why am I doing it? Am I doing it for the fame, for the money, or because I want to be able to have said that I did it? And it's
Right.
usually more, or because I enjoy it. Same with the music. Like, do I want to get a hit song on the radio? Is that my goal? Is like, no, I just want you to be able to say, hey, hey Siri, play
Yeah.
December is for Lovers by Mr. Canoe, and it comes up, right?
Yeah. Oh,
And
that's cool.
and that's to me like, well, you kind of have to, it's like moving the goalposts a little bit and like figuring out like what counts as success, what am I willing to do, what and sometimes if you realize like, oh well, what I really want is unattainable or it's worth more effort than it is. I mean, even right
Right.
now, so I'm working on, like I mentioned, I'm working on this Christmas album. And so I've recorded about 10 songs, 6 of them are originals. And then I was like, oh, because I try to write a Christmas song every year. Like Christmas time, it's
Yeah.
just kind of a tradition that I do. So I haven't written my Christmas song this year. I'm due to write a new one, but I'm not sure what it's going to be about yet. Um, but so I have this backlog of songs. And last year I put one out on Spotify and I was like, oh, I could probably go back and record these other ones. So I put these together. And then I was like, oh, if I'm going to make a Christmas album, I should probably have a couple of old classics, right? So I like recorded Sleigh Ride and Chestnuts Roasting
Yeah.
and Silent Night.
Nice.
And so, but as I'm prepping it, I realized, oh crap, Sleigh Ride is still copyrighted. And
Yeah.
so is the Chestnuts Roasting. That's like to the estate of Mel Torme or whatever. And like, I got to figure out, okay, and the service that I'm using to distribute DistroKid, like they have a service, but it's like an extra $12 per song per year, which
Hmm.
grand scheme of things isn't that much money.
Yeah.
But I have to go like, okay, am I expecting to make this money back? Why am I doing this? Like,
Yeah.
why do I want to do this other than like, to brag about it or whatever, right?
Right.
And and I think I came just like yesterday. I was thinking, so do I do it or do I not do it? Like, I'm like, once again, it's $12. It's not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
I've spent more on a sandwich and
Yeah.
that I didn't like, and so
Yeah.
it's fine. But I think that exercise of reflecting, why do I want to do this?
Yeah.
Why am I trying to do this? Why is this important? I think and then adjusting your expectations.
Right.
I think I mean, I'm a big proponent of the old adage that the perfect is the enemy of the good,
Yep.
and sometimes we get so hung up on this perfect notion of like, well, what I really want is this thing. It's like, well, if you get so hung up on trying to get that thing, good enough is better than nothing, and
Yeah.
something is better than nothing, and also, you'll never get truly great at things unless you suck at it first, and you kind of
Yeah.
gotta make a thing first.
That's kind of the like. There's so many things. This is
So many things. Yeah,
so
sorry.
many things, but that's the one reason why I uh kind of had cold feet starting the podcast, and you'd think like,
Sure.
okay, but it's like I don't know. I hold myself to a standard like of. I mean, I bought lights it's like
and,
because I
and that's good, right? Like, and you should have a standard, right? Like, you don't
yeah
want to. There's a great interview with Ira Glass,
yeah
who's wait, no, he does This American Life podcast, right?
yeah
And he talks about how there is a gulf or a gap between your taste and your ability,
mm-hmm
and at the beginning, especially, that gap is very large, and like you have good taste, and that's why you want to make a thing. That's why you want to do podcasts. That's why you want to make shoes, is because like you have good taste, and you want, and you're like, oh, I see how to do that, right?
Yep.
But there's a gap in between your ability and so like then you try to do it. It's like, ugh, what I just made is not good. I know
Yeah.
because I have good taste. I know what good stuff is. This is not good.
Yeah.
And most people are too afraid to to reconcile, say like, yep, this is not good, but the next one's going to be better. Eventually I'll get there, and that gap gets smaller and smaller with experience and with
Yep.
practice, and you can't expect, I mean, it's one in a million type of person who just has that sort of raw talent or luck or ability to be able to be like, okay, I'm going to make this hit single the first time I ever try to make music. Like, it
Right.
can happen, but it's not likely,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
you shouldn't count on that.
Yeah. Um the whole thing when I was looking at starting this, of course, the first thing I did was like YouTube, how to start a YouTube channel. Like,
Uh-huh.
and the first thing you get is like, man, what's the guy turned boxer, Jake,
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
whatever. He's like
Paul,
fighting Mike Tyson.
something
Yeah.
Paul. Yeah.
Jake Paul, Logan Paul. And, um, people like would come up to him and be like, oh, I want to start a, channel, and I want to be just like you, blah, blah, blah. And like, he would just be like, what, how many videos do you have up? Like, that would be his first question. And they'd be like, oh, none. And he'd be like, no, like, you got to have at least 100 videos before any of this is like
Yeah.
real. And I was like, all right, I'm on 7. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
Like, let's go. And I think that's part of the next, like, for me, like, the next phase is like the longevity of the situation as well. I think
Sure.
I've come in and I'm like, okay, I've made 7. I've got a little bit of a system down where I can just go boop boop. I'm not editing us, like that kind of helps. Um and then I just put it out. Like, I don't
Yeah.
worry about viewership or whatever. I just have these conversations. They're fun, and then maybe people will like them, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and
Um
I think that's a good attitude. And I think it's a good way to decide, like, to help yourself figure out, all right, is this what it is that I want? I think that too many people, um, want the result without the work to
yeah.
do it, right? And you have to really think of, and you have to think like, well, would you be doing this if there was no chance of success, of it ever like blowing up, or right, would you still do it?
Right.
And right, and so I think about that with music and songwriting and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I would keep, I like and I think kind of what I was
Mm,
saying before is that what I really like about songwriting is why where I'm at now is that it takes a bunch of these elements and puts them together in a way, and it's quick output, and I can always, I can
right.
bust out a song in an afternoon sometimes.
Right.
And actually, and that's actually one of my favorite things about it. Like, I think that um I do really think that there's like creative energy or muses, or like this conduit to something that like doesn't, that's outside of yourself.
Mm,
And that when you're really kind of in like a flow state, or in like a zone of real creative activity, um, you really feel this sense of like, I didn't make this. It needed to exist, and I was a conduit to will it to exist, because it wanted to be there, and I
right.
didn't really force it. It just kind of was, and it, like, that was the thing, that it was so obvious, and it wasn't hard because it just kind of came through me, right?
Right.
Um, and you can't, you have to like be proficient enough in your medium to be able to Ouija board it like that, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it takes that time, that work, to recognize what's good and what's bad, and to be able to kind of like have those tools. And
Right.
but even if you're not, it's and so it's less about success, and it's more about the making and the more about like, I want to make this thing, or I want to do this thing. I want to express this idea in this way. Right.
Right. Oh man.
Once again,
Um,
there's a lot to chew on there.
yeah,
Sorry.
it is a lot. But it's also good. Like, man, the one thing I'm still buzzing on is the idea of like the idea of like the and this might seem like a little departure, but like the idea of you've spent all this time writing a book versus like being able to rip a song out, get instant feedback. Where I feel like you're at this level of like, because you've sunk so much time in, it's almost like you're at this not a level of desperation, but it feels like you're like, I have sunk so much into this. Please, someone hold it and love it. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I don't want to tie everything back to footwear, but that's kind of like,
It's your show. That's, of course.
well, no, yeah, but I kind of have like two projects right now, and one I have sunk some time into, and so like it's hard for me to make even the slightest change. And then the other one, it's been real fast. Like we literally just ripped it off a page. But
Yeah.
everyone's just kind of been like, "Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, that's cool." And like someone will give me another idea. I'm like, "Sure, put that in there. I don't care." Like it's everybody's shoe at this point, and we just like
And
fast
those
track
are the
it.
one, and those are the ones that feel magical, right?
Yeah,
Those ones that come and like, I mean, Kittens and Blender was like that. I told you that also fast. It's like it came real fast, and everybody's like, yeah, 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 yeah. As
yeah,
opposed to other projects that I feel, yeah, I've toiled on and thought about. It's like, oh, that's not quite right, right?
right.
And it's, I really do feel like if I was to invent a religion, it would be about channeling creative energy,
Yeah,
because I feel like there's something so spiritual really about connecting in a way where I am I'm a funnel to creative
right,
energy, and it literally feels like, well, it wasn't me, it was so obvious, it just needed to be made that way, like that's
right.
just how it needed to be.
I think like it reminds me a lot of there was like a Michael Jackson Oprah interview where
Okay.
like he was just like talking about how he can't go to sleep sometimes because he's just been given music and
Yeah.
he has
Yeah.
to like manifest the music.
Yeah.
Like uh,
I had a just after the pandemic, it was like when all the lockdowns were going down. I was driving down to Utah and to my parents' house. Before I left, I had a little trio at the time with Chantel Oppie and
yeah,
Brian Morrison. We had a little
yeah,
trio, and before I left, I said, "Hey, give me a topic and like a style that I'll write a song." And they both kind of gave me one. Chantel was like, "Write a song that's like about springtime, sort of like a James Taylor sort of springtime song." It's like, okay.
hmm,
And then Brian says, "Oh, Brian, who's in the middle of getting a divorce, says, can you write a song about moving on? That's kind of like a Vince Capaldi song." I'm like, okay.
oh man,
And so I drive, the full 13 hours or whatever it is.
yep,
Don't really think about it. But get into my parents' house and it's like midnight. I lay down and my brain goes, "What was it, the thing that Chantel said?" It's like, "Oh yeah, like James Taylor. It'd be something like, and then the sky with the sun." Oh yeah, like that. And then, oh man, I should probably write this down. And
yeah,
so I sit up, grab my dad's guitar, and I kind of like do a little voice note. I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah," and it'd be like this, and it like just right flows. Like,
right.
okay, all right, now I can go to bed. So I lay down. And what was Brian's song? Oh, it was like it'd probably be like this, and I'm just fading out, and then all of a sudden it's like a couple lines pop out. I'm like, oh man, that's really good too. Okay, I'm looking at now. It's like 2:30 in the morning. It's like, yeah, but
Yep,
if I like this is good stuff, and if I don't write it down, if I don't get it, then it'll be gone. But like I need it. I need to,
Yeah.
yeah. And so yeah, those are two of my favorite songs that I've written, and they
Nice.
came so quickly, and they felt like there's something true about them, and
Yeah.
um, yeah, I've thought about if I was to write a memoir or like a autobiography, it might, I mean, I might have an album title called "Haunted by the Muses," where because it's that same sort of thing you're saying. Like sometimes, just like Michael Jackson, right? Sometimes it's like, well, I can't sleep because all I can think about
Yeah.
is this idea that I'm working on,
Yeah.
and until I somehow either write it down or make a quick recording of it or like work something out, I won't be able to rest. And then
Yeah.
even and so sometimes the thing that drives me to finish a thing is that it's I feel like I'm being haunted by it, right? It's like an
Mm,
idea that's like sits. It's like, oh, but you got to finish this thing. This is this thing. Remember that
yeah.
good idea? It needs to be made. Remember that, and it's like it
Yeah.
won't shut up until I make it, and then once I finally make it, I can be like, okay, it's done. I recorded it. It's good. Like here
Is
it
that
is.
is that feeling man, there's a couple of things. Is that feeling like is that I don't is that can that be taught? You know what I'm saying? Like cuz
I I don't know if it can be like I do think that creativity is like a muscle.
yeah.
And I think, it's just like, I mean, just like uh, spiritual promptings that, and things like, prayer and meditation and things
Yeah.
like you, when you do those things, when you present yourself as a capable messenger,
Mm,
and I think those ideas come. And
right.
so I mean, because I don't know if it's necessarily taught in the sense like, oh, this is what you got to do this, and then it's
Yeah.
more like if you prepare yourself to receive that kind of creative inspiration, then it will come.
Yeah.
That I mean, that's what I think. That's how I see it anyway. So I don't know. Like it's part of it too is having the confidence that it will come,
Right.
right? Like sometimes you sit at a blank page and you're like, oh, I got a deadline, I got to make this thing, or I got to do this by whatever, and you get all nervous about it. And because you're just like, well, what if I can't? What if what if it doesn't come? And then I'll be
Yeah.
embarrassed, and I won't be able to feed my family or whatever the thing is. Um, um, and sometimes just being able to step back and be like, no, it'll come when it's ready. It'll
mm,
come, and having that confidence that like, oh, it'll come it'll present itself, and I'll be ready and I'll recognize it, and I think that also comes with repetition, come with experience. Like the more you do it, the more confidence you have in yourself. It's like, well, I'll be able to come up with another shoe design. Like I've
yeah.
done it 100 times. I'll be able to do it. And
Yep.
but if I force it, it won't it be nearly as good as if I wait for that inspiration to strike and
Yeah.
be the right thing.
Sometimes I like I I've I'm working on this. I've worked on several shoes like this, but right now I had this one problem with a design, and I'm like, I was just kind of putting it off, like just like in the side, and like it's here. I know it's a problem. I know it's a problem. I'm gonna have to visit it. I know. And then I think I just knew. I just kept saying in my mind, well, like, what? I'm gonna have to sit down and do this. Like, I'm gonna have to sit down with it at some
Yeah.
point. I'm gonna have to, like, there's no way around it. It's not like I'm just gonna like happen into this solution. Like, I've just got to
Yeah.
sit down with it, take like a quiet moment, like, and it will come. And I think that's also like, man, that's something I want to talk about as I get in. I've often wondered, like, because I'm a senior now, senior, what does that mean? Like, how do you, like, what's the difference? You know, like, what's the difference? And I think what you're talking about, when you're talking about that confidence, like something's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is, I feel like that's like one of the mainstays, like the one of like the, I wouldn't say like, it's like a, it's one of the bars, like it's a height that like you get to it and you're like, yeah, if I just sit down and noodle on
Yeah,
this thing, like the idea will come.
it'll come.
Um,
And
yeah.
then also, as you get better, you start to take for granted how good you are,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like and things that are easy for you are would have been really hard for you 10 years ago, or to the person who's just getting out of school. And so
Yeah.
like every once in a while, some like it's somebody I had a manager remind me, if this is of user experience stuff, doing it for 17 years, um some of it is so obvious and common sense to me. It's like, well, you just do this, right?
Yeah.
Just make, it's just a drop down. Like, what's it? And to me, it's so obvious, but somebody who hasn't been doing it for 15 years, they it's like they're like, I don't even know how would you even do that, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember complaining to a manager once, like, I feel like a fraud, like like it's not hard to just do this, like, why? And he reminds, like, well, yeah, but like most people haven't been doing it their whole career, and so they don't have the confidence, they don't have the backstory, they haven't seen it in action before, they might
Yeah.
have the idea, but they don't have the sense, like, oh, right, that's the right idea because I've tried that before, or I've seen it done before, or like it makes that connection of it
Yeah.
working.
So,
So experience gives you just the context to know, like, to recognize a good idea.
right.
That's
Like
I feel
the,
like,
oh, sorry. I was just going to say like
yeah.
we were talking about like the conduit to the
Hmm.
idea. Like it's like, I feel like the, that's the other thing I want to talk to you about is the more you talk, the more I'm like, you know things. Like, like it feels like, um, it feels like there's no, and I meet people like this, but like, I feel like there's no end to the amount of books, plays, music, genres. Uh, you're talking about games. You're talking about like, it feels like you have like this like breadth of like knowledge, like, and it makes me wonder. I'm like, did your parents just like have like the classics and just like hand it to you? Like, like where is like this like, where is this knowledge base coming from? Where you're like, oh, it's a song like this person, or it's a, it's, I'm writing a song in this style, or like, and then you
Yeah.
have the knowledge of the chords and the thing, and like, uh, that's the thing that's impressed me with you is like, is you just have, you're just like, I just, yeah, okay, I'll just jump on the piano real quick, and or like, I'll just pull the
Well,
guitar down, and it's like,
but a lot of that comes back to saying, oh, I want to do that. In order to do that, I need to have these skills.
yeah,
So I need to learn how to do these skills first, and then I can get to that, right?
yeah,
So, like, it's, line upon line kind of stuff where,
yeah,
um, you know, I do need to. I don't play the piano well, but that's on my short list of things that I need to, like. It would serve me well to be better at the piano, and so, like, at some point in the not too distant future, I will start focusing on that. Even
yeah.
though I learned recently that, I don't know if you about John Lennon, he didn't really play the piano until the Beatles broke up, essentially toward the end of the
Oh
Beatles.
shoot.
And
Okay.
he was a guitar player,
Yeah.
right? And he played the guitar, and essentially he got to the point where he felt like he couldn't really progress anymore in the guitar, and so he moved to the piano. And if you think about a lot of his later music as a solo artist, it's very piano driven.
Right.
and and he said in an interview, it's like, it's because when he started over in piano, all of a sudden the things that were solidified to him in a guitar format were he was new again and he was fresh again and he could
Right.
make mistakes again. And he could do stuff that he didn't know what he was doing. He could experiment, but like that he couldn't do on a guitar because he'd done it everything. And so
Right.
all of a sudden, when he was on a new instrument, it gave him this new creative outlook to kind of like try other things that he wouldn't have tried otherwise. And so
Right.
I think I glommed onto that concept of like, yes, I'm gonna learn the piano, but it'll be when I feel like I've maxed out on guitar,
Right.
which I still am not quite there. I feel like I'm a real good rhythm guitarist.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good songwriter. I'm not a lead guitarist. I'm not very good at the meedly me's and the solos
Yeah.
and the
Do
improvisation
you
stuff.
do you find like you talking about um like how do you have a something similar like in UI UX that keeps you fresh? Like or are you like this is how I do UX design?
Yeah, I mean, what keeps me fresh is that I'm working at a consult. I mean, I would get real stale if I was at the same place all the time.
Yeah.
But so what's been nice is I mean I've only been in Alaska for 3 months or so, 3 4 months. Before that, I was working on uh, is like a job board for a culinary institute, and before that, I was doing like a little container tracker for expediters.
Nice.
And so like each time you like move into a new project, it's part of the part of the job is like bringing in all this new like getting your head around. It's like, okay, cargo, okay, what does this mean? Who are my users? What is it? So right now, one of the things I'm doing is I'm making user personas and I'm interviewing, people, and I'm getting a sense of like, okay, who's really using this? Who's, and then
Yeah.
you use that and you empathize and you use that to like then inform. And since every user type is different, um, I have this breadth of experience. Like, okay, well, at Expeditors, this is how they managed tracking, and we use this. Would that tool work?
Right.
No, because it's different because of this and this. But we could still use this element that I use here. Okay, what about what I did at AT&T? Will anything there come handy? Not really. Okay, what about the Microsoft stuff that I did? Any of that stuff come in handy? Oh yeah, remember that study we did that showed that people didn't like this? Yeah, we could use that. And so like all those different experiences, you know, and so add to your just the what you have in your quiver to be like, oh, here's a tool, I've seen that
Right.
before, and this is how we solved it before, but it's different every time because your users are different and your goals are different.
Mm.
And so that's what's kind of fun. That's why it's not. I'm not just making the same thing every time. A big part of my trifecta is figuring out and then helping, right? So then I make, but you
Mm.
can't make until you've really figured out like, why am I making this thing? Who am I making it for? You know?
Yeah. It sounds like well, I mean, it's necessarily like this that your work is for you're trying to serve the user
Yeah,
creatively in your own projects. It's where you're getting out the rest of your creative juices. It's like you're exercising muscles on both sides. You're like like constantly creating. You're constantly like it feels like yeah, like there's a side that is for um yeah, it's like there's the a professional versus like your your
hobbyist.
yeah, like your hobbyist type of stuff. Um I don't want to say it was like self-serving, but it's like you're yeah, it's like there's both arms
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Well, and I would say this too, like after doing board games where it kind of felt like a dream job, at the same time it ruined board games for me a little bit. So
Mm,
like I couldn't play a board game for years. Because I would play it. All I could do whenever I play is I'd like kind of criticize the internal mechanics or the
right.
artwork or the publishing and like all this stuff. And I, and I couldn't. and just enjoy playing a board game.
Yeah.
And so I worry about, so that's one of the things that keeps me from like being like, I'm going to be a full-time musician and I'm going to do this all the time. It's like, I don't think I want to do that. I think I want to keep it as something that's just art. It's just something that I'm making to express myself, something
Right.
that I'm making so that I can enjoy. It's something that I'm making because I want it to exist in the world,
Hmm.
not because and not because I'm going to make money or because I'm going to make it big or my ship's going to come in. If my ship comes in, if I make money, that's great. But the reason I'm doing it is because I want it to exist.
Right. That's cool. Um, well, we're at 59. I don't know.
That seems like a good note to end on.
Yeah,
But
it's like that's pretty nice. Yeah, like you said a lot of stuff. I'm gonna end up going back on this and reading through. There was one man I was thinking, I was like, what is that one thing you said? I was like, I'm gonna have to listen back at it because there was one thing that was like that's the one I needed for sure. It wasn't exercising the muscle. It wasn't like there's the conduit thing that was nice. There's the idea of complex versus simplicity and what people can digest and like own. But even though there are games that are out there that like they are
oh,
truly,
sure.
truly difficult, but they are very
And complicated.
successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. like, but,
Yeah, but those things will never make the mass market, right? They're
right.
niche and intentionally niche, right? And
Yeah.
so there's a reason why apples to apples,
Yeah.
you know, broke through the independent and made it into the mainstream because it's so simple. It
Yeah.
catches people immediately, and
Yeah. And that's what you see on the shelf at Target. You're not
yeah,
like, um, but, yeah, no, and then, oh man, so many good things, but as always, you know, I just, I don't know. Thanks for coming on, for number one.
you bet, you bet.
I kind of surprised you with it about a month ago, and then I feel like I kind of just dropped in on you like yesterday. It was like, hey,
It's like,
remember
oh,
that?
right, right, yeah,
That'd be fun.
fine,
but
that's fine.
but
I enjoy it. I enjoy it.
yeah. Um
We'll do it.
but
Do it. We can
man,
do it again if your listeners demand it. I'll be happy to come back sometime.
yeah, it's another thing where I'm going to put it out and get that feedback like
Yeah,
immediately.
I'm hoping
So,
to get that Bergini bump on my
yeah.
Spotify listeners.
Oh yeah, so
So
go ahead and plug yourself. I mean,
yeah,
Mr. Canoe
but
is your
yeah. So my stage
Spotify.
name is Mr. Canoe. Mister, got to spell it out. Mister. Canoe like the boat. Canoe.
Yep.
But so MrCanoe.com has links to my things, but you can find me on Spotify and Apple Music and on all the places that you do. Mr.
Um
Canoe. So I'll drop I should be dropping my Christmas album in a couple weeks here, and
is Christmas for Christmas on it?
Christmas for Christmas is on it.
It's my favorite thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
even
I got a
though
great.
even though I think and just for everyone to know it's like a Hallmark movie inspired song. It's great. I don't want to give it away. But even though like I wonder cuz like you've done a lot of stuff. Like I don't like to like I don't know, like people fanboy like this shoe cuz it's like the thing, but I'm like, I don't know, I do other stuff and I like it just
Sure,
as
sure.
much. Yeah, it's like, so I try
Yeah.
not to like fanboy, like, oh man, Christmas is so cool. Like, even though I'm
Yeah.
sure you have creative works that you have at your core that like, this is you and this is the
Yeah.
best you.
But it's hard though. Like actually, music stuff. It's actually when people will get hung up on the board game stuff. That
Yeah.
is a point where I'm like, I don't really do board games right now. That's not really. It's like, oh, you love board games though, right? Like I was like, yeah, I guess, yeah.
Like,
You're the
yeah,
board
right.
game guy. It's like, well, but I mean, it was. I do
Yeah.
still like them,
Yeah.
but right now I'm not really focused on that at all.
Oh man. Oh man. I hope shoes does not become that. It might, who knows.
Who
I've
knows?
asked people like, there's not very many 50-year-old footwear designers out there. They're like, yeah, but why not? I
Why
had a
not?
guy the other day say like,
If you love it,
he's like, look,
love it.
there's some famous footwear designers and they're older and they kept with it, and
Yeah.
why not? Like,
But I tell you, like I am often jealous of the folks who found what the thing that their passion is when they were 13, and then they've been doing it their whole life. And
right,
that's the thing that means everything to them. Like I feel like sometimes false and like fickle. Like even right now I'm all in music, but like there's just part of me is like, yeah, I bet in 5 years I'm like real deep into improv or something like that. Or I'm
yeah,
I get into whittling wood, and I start making like I could see lots of paths of a thing that I could see myself getting burned out of music and feeling like, okay, I did that, now I'm gonna make a movie or
right,
whatever, right? Like, and that's okay.
yeah,
It comes back to like I just want a place to express myself and to make things and to feel like I'm adding something, and
yeah.
I like it.
I had a friend who, um, like there was a guy outside of the studio that we were in Salt Lake. He was whittling walking sticks,
Uh-huh.
and he's like, "Those are awesome. I'm gonna make a store for you on like a Shopify, like
Etsy or
sell your
whatever. Yeah.
sticks." Like, yeah. And they were awesome. I mean, like this guy was out there all day in the sun, just like sticks, and he would wrap them with like like cord and
Yeah, leather
um
and
yeah, like super cool. And yeah, he's just a guy out on the street making sticks, and it was like, I'm making you a store. This is gonna be great. Like, I don't know what happened to it, but that's pretty sweet. So you never know.
never know.
You could be out in your back porch just
Whittling away.
wooding away. Well, cool. Man, I'm gonna like might be the first episode I've listened to back just so I can find that point that you made that I can't remember. But anyway, thanks for
Okay.
coming on. We
Yeah.
will shoot. Next episode is another footwear designer. So we're going to be back on the train, but I don't know which footwear designer it's going to be. I'm trying to get one
Good
who,
one.
yeah, I'm trying to get like, I'm talking to one who everyone knows, and then, well, in the footwear world, and you probably won't know him. And then there's another guy who's on the rise, and I've lucked into connecting with him through some mutual contacts, and I'm like, this guy's cool. Let's talk to him. So, that does not distract from everything I still want to know about you, which is so many things. Like, I want a list of all the stuff you've done. Like, because even in this thing, I'm like, I had no idea you did board games. Like,
Really?
yeah, I was like, well, didn't know that's where this was going.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, yeah.
um, yeah, I know Brian post board game Brian.
Yeah.
Uh, but I anyway, it, did you not, was that dice game you brought over one time? Was that some game that you guys just liked as a family? I was like, did Brian make this? Like, it's like some card game or something, and my son was really into it, and I was like, this looks like something Brian did in his
Maybe.
house.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
Okay.
It's probably,
Like,
yeah,
anyway.
I can't remember.
Well, okay. Well, come back for another episode. This is
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah.
Again, got us out of the space. Just talked about creativity and
Making
being,
stuff.
yeah, making stuff. And then that's what it is. Your drive to finish. Oh my gosh. The whole point you're here. That you have something in the head that's just telling you to finish it. That is literally what I feel about this podcast. I was sitting there one night deciding on whether to hit
Gotta do it.
submit, and I was like, someone needs this. I'm just
Yeah.
going to hit it. You just rip the
Really.
Band-Aid off and just
Let's do it.
launch yourself into, I'm a podcaster now. Like,
You are a podcaster.
All right. Well, see you next time. Brian,
Next time.
thanks. It's good to see you. Um, and come back for another Tech Packs or Do, and then visit Brian's stuff. Listen to the Ready Go podcasts, even though he hasn't
All
done it in a
right.
long time. And
Yeah, my sister
listen to
wants to.
his
Yeah.
listen to his album, um, Mr. Canoe. All right, I'm done talking. Okay. All right, Brian. We'll see ya. Thanks for coming on.